Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I am really excited about our guest today, Jessica Fearnley, and she is one of the dames. I know you hear me talk about that group all the time, and we've had quite a few dames on here. But Jessica is a pretty extraordinary woman. I'm going to read her bio, and I'm going to bring her on. So Jessica is the business coach for women business-to-business consultants. She's passionate about empowering women to create wealth and opportunities for themselves and the people around them, and making sure they have a solid strategy to go with the heart that drives them. While a lot of classic business coaches focus on entrepreneurs building online businesses, Jessica is all about catering to consultants, and that is in caps. To consultants selling business-to-business services to corporate firms. She spent the last 8 years helping women uncover their next level self, add tens and often hundreds of thousands to their business revenue, and do it all while working less and earning more. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Before she was a coach, she was head of operations in a business consultancy startup that made the transition from 6 to 7 figures in revenue during the 4 years she was there. She wanted to bring that strategy to others after she left. It was more fulfilling to her to help people as individual entities turn higher profits rather than focusing only on big companies. She can say confidently that she's not a coach who has lots of big untested ideas. She's made both the consultancy and her own business work. She truly believes in not being a prisoner of your own success or living just to work. As a wife and mom of 2 boys, or mum of 2 boys, plus 2 cats and a dog, it's been vital for her to practice what she preaches. She's made it her goal every year to grow her revenue and cut back her working hours. And she wants to do this for you too. So without further ado, let's meet Jessica.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Iris. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. And after we spoke the first time, I figured you would be perfect for this podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you and I spoke, and so I know a little bit. And I'm not going to ask you to sing just yet. Maybe towards the end. But I told Megan that we need to have a Dames karaoke, like a virtual karaoke.
Oh, that would be so fun. Yeah,
Wouldn't
absolutely.
that be amazing? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a business coach, as you said. I am it's important to me not just to be like a list of things, like a wife, a mum. I'm trying to be a person more, if that makes sense. So one of the things that is really important to me is having a good work-life balance. So actually, I've worked really hard over the last 12 months to get a good balance in my own business, because I can't teach these things to other people if I'm not living it myself. So actually, a lot of my time I spend in my local national park. How awesome is that to have one? With my dog. And as long as there aren't any cows around, we are absolutely fine. But yeah, that's something that it's quite a new addition. We only got the dog last summer. And it's really kind of given me a lot of pause that I had this feeling of I would really like to be outside more. I'd really like to kind of be walking and active every day. And I suddenly had this moment this summer and I was like, oh, wow, that used to be something that I wanted to do. And now it's something that I am doing every day. Isn't that so fun? So yeah, am I saying the right kind of things, Iris? What kind of post should I be covering?
No, you talk. So we're recording this, and this is very really whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to ask questions as we go on.
I love it.
But we want to hear about you. We want to hear. I mean, the dog thing. Hello, I can relate to. I just adopted a not 15-year-old, a 12-week-old demon. She was eight weeks old when we got her. She is absolute hell on four paws.
Yes, that's a lovely phase, isn't it? That kind of 8 to
we
6
actually,
months.
well, so she's an Australian cattle dog, and we had an Australian Shepherd that was a distant herder, and the cattle dogs are direct herders. So they go after the heels, and they go after anything that they can bite. And they're also very stubborn, and they don't listen. And so we called in a behaviorist, so that I stay sane and I can run my business, because I was doing I was on a Zoom meeting last week, and I have a gate up now, but I had a lesser gate up, and she snuck in and dug her teeth into my heel.
Oh, wow.
There were a few expletives that shot out of my mouth during that interview, and I was like, I am so sorry. So
we definitely went through that puppy phase. I remember, like, there was a phase where the dog would always be howling in the background on my calls. Right. It's like having a crying baby. It's like there's nothing you can really do or say. I found that a really stressful phase of having a puppy. But my dog she's mellowing out a little bit. So I've got a Cocker Spaniel. She's black, and she's a little bit curly actually in her fur. So she is technically a cockapoo. But she is 3/4 spaniel and 1/4 poodle, so she looks just like a working cocker spaniel. So quite often when we see people in the park, they've got the identical dog, and they're like, "Oh, she's a working cocker," and I'm like, "No, she's a cockapoo. She's not a working dog." But like, it's a bit ridiculous because spaniels are working dogs anyway. But I like to think that my little show cockapoo that I have, she's calmer than she would be if she was a proper working dog. But that's one of the things that's lovely actually about taking her into the Peak District where we live in the UK, because it's all this kind of moorland with heather, and it's like she knows she's a gun dog, even though she's never done anything gun related, or you can do gun dog training. But we've never done that with her. But as soon as she gets out there, it's like she just goes mental, and she's jumping in and out of all the heather. It's completely lovely. But she's a very happy dog. I think she's quite fun to be around because she's like, "Oh, a leaf! Oh, another dog! This is the best day of my life." So she has a very positive influence on us as a family, I think.
And that's great. And you asked if that's what you should be talking about when you're talking about work-life balance, and that you can allow yourself the time to do that, right? To go out and walk, her in the park, and be able to get that time to yourself. Because as entrepreneurs, especially starting out, you don't have time. There's just, you don't have that time. So the fact that you make that time, that's important, right? And it's important for us mentally as well, because you need that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think if you do what we do, you can actually burn out a lot of the time, but you can burn out quite quickly if you are not looking after yourself. And for me, and I know for you as well, Iris, like when you're very creative in what you do, I spend a lot of my time creating content and working with my clients. I can't do that in a sort of consistent, like top of my ability way if I'm not also investing in looking after myself and making sure that all those different needs are met. Like, we need to be spending time with the right people, we need to be looking after our bodies, like we need to be doing exercise, eating the right food. I'm not saying that I always get that brilliantly right, but I just got back from holiday, and that whole thing, you're like, it's a new chapter, I'm gonna up my game on everything. So I'm trying to be good again, like with what I eat. But I always find that towards the end of term, like all the takeaways and the snacking in the evenings, it starts to creep in again. But you feel so much better when you're taking care of yourself. But it's also like the emotional needs. You need to make sure that you are kind of doing your journaling practice. Like lots of entrepreneurs have like a daily practice that they do to just keep your head in the right place. It's really important. And I think if you're going to be doing this for the long term, I've had my business now for 8 years, and I plan to still be here doing this in the next 8 years. And it has to be something that you can roll out of bed, rinse and repeat every day, because otherwise you just get very burnt out very quickly.
Yeah. And I started, I've been working with a mindfulness coach for the last 2 years, and I've just really started practicing gratitude, and man, what a difference. So I get up every day, walk outside in my backyard, and I just say, how grateful I am for everything. And I don't know, how you feel about people listening to this are going to be like, what? But I started this practice on the new moon and the full moon, and there's, manifestations and letting go of things that no longer serve you, and then inviting things in. And on Saturday, it was the full moon or the new moon. And so it was for manifesting things, to come in. And when you do that, you have to have a very grateful heart. And I was working on my one sheet. And for those of you listening, in our group, we have a one sheet that really lays out who we are, what we do. So when we pass it to somebody in our group or somebody out of our group, they know who we're looking for, networking wise. And I was working on my one sheet, and Kim Russo, who is in our group, and I'm going to give her a huge shout out on our shout out day. And I were talking on Friday, and she said, "Hey, let me just format it for you." And out of the kindness of her heart, I mean, this was, and it just made me so grateful. And so we talked a little bit Saturday, and then she worked on it some more. And then we started talking about other stuff. And when I went to do my, I lit my fire and sat outside, and it was a beautiful night. And all of that gratitude came from that one little thing that Kim did that was able to, carry into what I was doing. And what I find is that I don't think that people realize one kind gesture can change the trajectory of somebody's day, week, month, life, business, right? And that's what that did. What that did for me, and it made me realize that you talk about our get up, work, rinse, repeat. I find starting that I don't journal yet. I've been working on that. That's just something that, because I have ADD, so I'll start to write something.
It's not for everyone, and I think it's more important to find something that works for you, that you can do consistently, rather than follow someone else's list to the letter.
Right. And so for me, it's just waking up and being grateful every day, and that's been a huge change. I mean, just this week things have changed. So
that's amazing, and I love that actually, because I've been doing quite a lot of work personally, like in the last year, like focusing on like, am I showing gratitude? But I think as well, we can pick up some of these like habits across our whole lifetime. And certainly I know for me, something that I used to love to do is to like only remember the bits that were difficult in the day, or only remember the bits that felt a bit awkward, or where I felt a little bit hurt or rejected by something, and just sit at the end of the day and sort of play that on a little loop. And it's so funny, isn't it, that we can do these things for years and we're not even conscious that we're doing them. And I love what you're saying there, Iris, because I think when we start to proactively shift and be intentional about starting to replace this with a positive mindset practice, showing our gratitude, like consciously remembering at the end of the day, what were the really lovely moments today? What were the things where you got that kind of real kind of rush of energy, or that real like sense of love? Because I find this quite a lot, and I'm sure you do too. Like women entrepreneurs have a lot of love that they will happily give. And if we're not kind of consciously receiving, we can miss out on so much. I don't know if that resonates with you.
No, it does. And it's funny because before we go to bed every night, I ask my wife, what are 3 things that you're grateful for that happened today? And so I start my day with gratitude, and I end it with gratitude, right? So it's finding those things that that we never thought of before, and we have to think about it. Okay, what was grateful? Piper sat when I said sit. That's huge.
Sometimes that's a miracle,
right? I mean, I was like, oh my God, Piper sat when I said, sit. But it does resonate, because women entrepreneurs are, and not to put male entrepreneurs down. I mean, entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs, but I think that women have a different heart, and we have a different mindset, and we have a different perception of where we're coming from, I think. And it shows. And in our group especially, I have never met so many women willing to help each other,
Yeah.
like ever in one setting. And I'm like you, I want to help and I want to give and I want to see people grow and I want to be that, that hand up. And to find all of these like-minded women, it was mind-blowing to me. Like I was like, I'm home. Like I'm home. And it's been amazing. So you, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah. Well, I wish that I could say, like, oh, it's because I really thought about it and I realized my soul was calling me to become an entrepreneur. And really, it's like I fell off like several wagons, and that's where I found myself. So, like, there are several milestones I think that led me to that. And first of all, I had a breakdown when I was 27, and I was in kind of like my first kind of corporate job after university. I'd been there a few years, and I was making a really good name for myself. I had a really wonderful mentor who gave me a lot of support. I was kind of like, oh, this is awesome. I'm tipped for big things. Like my whole career is just unfolding in front of me. This is wonderful. And then to be honest, at the same time that all of that was going on, I wasn't really coping brilliantly. I had terrible irritable bowel, and it got worse, not better. I kind of thought maybe if I just ignore it, then it will just go away. But actually, it just got worse and worse. And I was at a point where really I was struggling to show up to work every day. I was having several days off sick each month. I wasn't able to eat very much food, so I was really skinny. Like when I got married, I was like a size 6, which I guess like in the US would be like a size 2. Is that a thing?
Wow. Yeah.
And so I had this like wonderful skinny figure, but like I wasn't doing well at all. I was just incredibly stressed. I couldn't sleep, and there wasn't really an obvious reason for why I felt like that. But I think now that I'm older and it's 12 years later, and I've had a lot of therapy, I've had a lot of time to reflect, I've been in different work situations, and I more and more see that like being in that kind of job in a 9 to 5 on like a floor with like 200 people in central London where no one's allowed to talk, but you all just have to email each other and set up a meeting. Like that is not the way to get the best out of me. It was an environment, like there's nothing wrong with it. We had this amazing office on the north bank of the River Thames. We could see the whole of London out of the windows. We were up on the 20th floor. So the view was amazing. But and when I first started there, I was like, I can't really believe that I'm here doing this. It's so cool. But it just wasn't the right environment for me. And I think that the pressure of having to fake it every day and be like, I'm okay, I'm doing really well, when I wasn't okay, and not really having anyone in my life at that point who could say to me, I don't think you're doing that great. I didn't really know what to do, so I did nothing. And then one day I had a breakdown. And I think that like I'm not embarrassed to tell that as a story anymore. Like when it first happened, I was mortified, and it was a really difficult thing. Like my family did not understand. They did not support my decision to quit that job, and it was hard because like on part of me just didn't want to quit at all. I just wanted to like push it all to one side and get back to work and get doing it. But at the same time, I was like, what my life has become, like this person who drags herself to work, who doesn't have any energy to do stuff in the evenings or at weekends. At weekends, I would sleep until 5 in the evening because my body was so exhausted. But like, I didn't have a very good doctor at the time. And again, they didn't really do anything that was helpful. And it is frustrating because I kind of think, did it have to be that bad? Like there could have been lots of things that could have happened to stop it getting to that point. But I think in a sense, I had to get to that point because that was the only thing that would actually make me take it seriously. And I've actually since spoken to so many women who've had a really similar experience. And sometimes we need to hit rock bottom, don't we, before like we can really take stock of it. So that was the first big milestone in me becoming an entrepreneur. The second thing was starting to to be honest, after that I had about 7 months where I didn't even get out of bed. But I did start to find myself recovering. And because I'd pushed myself so hard for sort of 3 or 4 years, it took a long time to recover. But one of the things that I started doing before very long is that first of all, I picked up like a part-time admin job, just very, very straightforward. It was kind of me like having rehab to go back to work type thing. And while I was doing that, I got an opportunity to go and work at a startup company. And initially it was like to do some basic like invoicing admin, but very quickly it became really clear that I had a lot of skills that I could bring to bear in helping to grow this company. So during the time that I was there, we grew it from 6 to 7 figures. And again, it was one of those things. It was a very different setup to the job that I'd had before. I wore my own clothes. I worked part-time. I worked from home a lot. And there was something about it. And I was like, I thought I was on the scrap heap, but there's a lot that I can bring to this role. So it started to light a bit of a fire in me. And to be honest, at the same time, while I was doing that, I started a multi-level marketing business selling greetings cards and stationery. And like, there was something in that I was like, oh, I kind of love this. I love my ability to make money that isn't tied to an employer. I wonder what this means. And so all these things were kind of percolating around. And basically the catalyst for making a change was that my first son was born. And I suddenly thought, you know what, like I've had a really good experience being at the startup. I've got to do a lot of things. So I was in a sort of director of operations role or head of operations, really, I think we'd say, and sort of building a lot of the processes in and helping like plan the growth that we're going to do and how we were going to put it into practice. But we'd reached that kind of point where it was like all the systems that we built at that point, we were then deciding it's time to rethink, it's time to rip it up and start again with something new. And something in me was just like, I feel like I've done that, and I'm not hungry for that kind of same process over again to sort of remake everything for a second time. Right. But I think also like part of it was practical, that I looked at what my life would be like if I went back to that job and I'd have to commute in to work and I wouldn't see my kid between Sunday night and Wednesday night when he was awake. And I just thought, you know what, I've kind of crashed out of corporate already. Like, I don't really want to go back to that way of working. I've kind of had a bit of a taste of freedom and flexible working, and I don't really want to take a step back. I want to do something a bit different. So that led me to, well, to be honest, at the time I said, I think I'm going to like go and ask the local sandwich shop if I can go and work there. And then while I'm working there, I'll like sneak in with all these like really good business ideas. And I said this to a friend of mine. She was like, that's not a good idea, which is great advice. And she said, I think you should become a business coach. And I was like, what even is a business coach? Like, whoa. And from there, really, like I picked up a few clients and I picked up a few more and then a few more. And like, it took me a long time to even say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, because I just felt like I was a mom of a 1-year-old playing at having a business, not really making a lot of money and not knowing if it was anything that I would be able to do for the long term. And really from there, sort of 8 years later, I'm very glad that I started out on the journey. I had no idea really what I was setting out on when I started. I just kind of thought, I'll pick up a few clients, then I'll make the money I want to make, and that's kind of all I want to do. But I think it's been an amazing journey for me over the last 8 years, and it really has been sort of like a personal development journey. Like I am not the person age 39 that I was age 31 when I started the business, and it's been such a positive, amazing sort of growth experience. Has been something that has really taken me by surprise, because I think it took me a very long time to actually properly commit to the life that I now have.
Well, and what I find fantastic about it is, when it's like, be a coach. I had somebody today who said, I know it sounds crazy, but maybe you should be a coach. And I was like, no, because I don't know. Not to say that I never would, but right now that's not where I'm at. I really enjoy what I'm doing with my clients. I actually did play mediator for one of my clients, which was weird, because I'm a marketing agency, and we've become friends. And so she called me up and she said, so I have a job for you. And I said, okay. And she goes, I need you to mediate this situation for me. I said, that's not any of my services, right? And she's like, well, yeah, but I know that you could do it. So she tells me the situation, and there's an issue with like 2 of her employees, and would I come in and mediate? And I said, sure. I mean, I'll I'll talk to them. I don't know, well, long story short, we had the meeting and all of the outstanding items, that she needed done were done a week after my meeting with them. So that was kind of cool. But I'm not there yet. But the fact that you were able to recognize, I don't think a lot of people recognize their strengths. I don't think a lot of people recognize that, hey, I can do this, right? And you may have had one client, and you may have two clients, and then all of a sudden, 8 years later, you're, where you are. But it had to start somewhere. And and when you had your breakdown, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, the good, the bad, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that needed to happen, so it would be the catalyst for your journey. Because when we spoke the first time, you were talking about, how you stopped doing your music for years, and now you were starting to get back to that again, right? And it's so important, because that's obviously a big part of you, a big thing that you love. And when those things are missing, a piece of us is essentially missing, right? So the fact that you recognize that, and you're like, oh, I haven't done that. I need to go do that. So I think a lot of your journey is just like this constant discovery along the way, and you just keep discovering these new things, and you keep acting on them, not just being like, oh yeah, that's there. You're like, oh, that's there, and I'm gonna go for it and tackle it and conquer it, and so I think that that's just all fantastic. So
yeah, and I think it is really interesting, because as you were saying that, Iris, I was like, do you know what? I don't know if I've ever thought this before, but I think one of the things that I had to learn when I was in corporate is like, I have to stop faking it. Like, I have to stop trying to be someone that I'm actually not. And it's not that I was bad at corporate. I was actually very good at my job. But the effort that it took me to sort of show up in the way that I was expected to show up, I think that was a huge thing that put a lot of strain on. And I think it's probably something that I've had to deal with several times, like in several cycles in my current business, because there can be a lot of pressure put on you to be a certain way, to be impressive enough, to have a lifestyle that kind of reflects what your clients are looking for. And I think sometimes clients can project, and not just clients, but people generally, they can project a certain ideal onto you. And I think there can be a temptation to try and live up to that. But I think what I've learned through being a coach is that actually you just sometimes have to let people's expectations just fall onto the floor, and just be like, I know you need me to be that, or you want me to be that, but I am this, and I can't pretend to be something that isn't my natural self. And I think certainly this year, one of the things that I have noticed is that my personal development work is leading me to reconnect with like my 20-year-old self, and kind of the person that I was before I kind of almost wiped the slate clean on myself and was like, oh, I need to become someone a bit different to have this kind of job. And it's been really interesting because, yeah, exactly what you're saying, reconnecting with the music that I love to play, and, the fact that I am a musician, that's been a really important part of it. But also, like you said today, oh, you've got different hair since we last spoke. And actually, like, it's been like my coaches were saying to me, like, what are the things that happen in cycles across your life? And I was like, oh, I went through a phase of like dyeing my hair all different colors when I was 19, and I dyed my hair white blonde when I was 29, and now I've just done it again when I'm 39. So it's really interesting. And it was so funny, because I came back from the hairdressers and I was suddenly like, oh, like all the things that I've been saying is like, oh, when I was blonde 10 years ago, oh, when I was blonde 20 years ago. And like, I think there's been something really important for me just in this current phase that I'm in, of like not kind of becoming something that's different to what I've been, but actually almost going back and reconnecting with that person who I was and I still am. Because I think actually it's brought me quite a lot of joy to reconnect with some of those things, like, because I think probably I had a narrative for a while that I'd grown out of them. And then when you suddenly think, what if I haven't grown out of them at all? What if I'm still a bit of a punk rocker underneath it all? Like,
yes,
that feels quite fun, doesn't it? So,
I mean, you know, and here's the thing. It's one of the things that I am finding, and I don't know if I told you this, but, you know, when we are our authentic selves, right, we bring the right people to us.
yeah.
So I had a coach tell me this like about 5 years ago, and it was, be less you. You're just a lot, and you're just too much for some people. And I got to the point, I was like, well, then fuck it, they're not my people. But it took me a long time, because I actually said, oh, okay, maybe I need to pull back and be somebody that I'm not. And I did that for about 2 years, and I didn't realize how unhappy I was until I got out of the situation and started just being me. And COVID, and well, you know, Nina. So COVID happened. So Kofi told me pre-COVID, you need to be doing video. And I said, I never need to be doing video. So then he convinced me. We did a couple of videos. Long story short, I meet Nina. I join her pod, and I meet this amazing, you know, group of people that I'm really good friends with to this day, and we'll be friends for life. But through that, I realized that, excuse me, being me was bringing me clients. People wanted to work with me, you know, and it was like it was really an oh shit moment for me, because I was like, holy crap, like that facade thing is gone. Like, you know, hello, I'm from, you know, the Midwest, and I'm going to be speaking like this and working with you like this. And it's like, no, that is not who I am. And that is not how I get results. And as soon as I started being me, you know, on video, I can't tell you how many people on LinkedIn wanted to work with me, because they were just like, you're so freaking authentic. And now, you know, fast forward 3 years later, and I know that I need to be more active on LinkedIn, and that's my plan in the next couple of weeks. But I still have people messaging me going, I haven't seen you do a video. Today's Wednesday. So last Friday, I got a message from somebody saying, you don't know me, but I've been following you for 2 years, and I've noticed in the past 2 months, you've barely been doing any video.
I love it when that happens. Yes. That's such a common experience, isn't it? Like, you don't necessarily get like a ton of feedback, but there are people in your audience who have been like listening to every word that you've been saying. They've just never let on that they're doing it. It's such an exciting moment when that happens. Yes.
And so I was like, oh man, I need to get my act together. And that's why I put a post in our pod, saying I just need like 2 weeks to get my act together, and then I'm going to start being active again, because there's just been a lot going on with, you know, dogs and a bunch of other stuff. But it really, that was like the kick that I didn't know I needed. I was like, oh crap, like people are looking, not only are they looking for me, they're missing me. They miss me. It's like Sally Field, you like me, you really like me, you know. So it was like, you know, one of those moments. And it was like a bit of a wake-up call. But again, to your point, you know, when you got to realize that being somebody that you're not wasn't the only thing it was getting you, was a whole bunch of stress. And then trying to live up to people's expectations is such freaking hard work.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, are you trying to live up to my expectations? So why am I going to? No, you know, this is me. And if you can accept who I am and the way that I work and my strategies and all of that stuff, then we're going to work together great. And I'm going to help you make a lot of money. If I'm not your person, that's cool, because there's somebody out there who is. And so I think it's great that you're reconnecting and kind of like resetting almost, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is hard when other people put expectations on you, and I think like we can experience that from a very young age. And I'm sure like a lot of it for me is that I was like very, I am very clever, but when I was at school I was very bright. I was like towards the top end of the class, and I felt a lot of pressure to be like, you must go to the top universities, you must get perfect grades. And I think that's kind of where the punk rock started, because I was sort of like, screw you guys, I'm not going to do that. And like I was in a massive rebellious phase kind of in the later half of my teenage years, and I didn't even go to uni at all until I was 21. Oh, I'll have to dig some out for you. They're hilarious.
Oh, you have to. I have to. I'll send you some. Well, actually, you can look on my Facebook, and I'm sure you could find some of my. It wasn't punk. It was, I don't know what I was, but yeah, we all go through these phases, and it's easy to rebel. It's just like so easy to rebel, because it's like people put these expectations on us, like like Jessica said, from an early age, right? And that causes trauma that Jen was talking about. And when you have trauma, it carries into your adulthood, and it affects decisions that you make. And when you have people that want you to be a certain way, I mean, I'm gay. I was gay my whole life. When I came out being gay, it was like, oh, no. You have to like boys. Being gay is bad. So then I liked boys because that's what I was supposed to do. And it was like I was like miserable. But that was like an expectation that was put on me. Another expectation, I mean, I can just go down the list of expectations that, were put on me. And it got me to the point that I just became this like crazy, out of control. No, I'm not going to do any of that. If anything, I'm going to do completely the opposite.
Yeah.
Because I'm, clever as well. And I was always at the top of my class. And, but I ended up rebelling and not going to college. Because I was like, screw it. I'm not doing it. And of course I ended up hurting myself in the long run. Well, in the short run, because in the long run, I turned out really well. But, in that like short period, right?
Yeah, so, it can be quite like self-destructive almost, because there's a place that we can occupy in the world. There's gifts and abilities that we have. And actually in rebelling in the way that it sounds like we both did, you end up kind of giving yourself a really small version of what your life could be. And over time, you are not fulfilled, and you haven't jumped in with both feet in the way that actually your gifts and abilities have enabled you to do. And I think we get like a very fractured way of being, where it's kind of like, I am capable of this, but I'm kind of doing this, and this gap is really hard. So I think actually people like us, we're quite well suited to being an entrepreneur, where actually suddenly, I mean, I found it massively liberating, just being like, there is no kind of peer group of work colleagues. I can get promoted whenever I like, because I just promote myself. and you can run as fast as you want to. I don't know about you, Iris, but I was told repeatedly in pretty much every job, can you just like work a bit slower, because like you're doing all your work in like half a day, and we need you to make it last a week.
Well, I think I didn't have that. I just had, I was always asked to be different.
Yeah. Can you be a bit less? Can you stop like being so intense? Can you stop saying exactly what you think in every situation? Whereas actually, as a coach and consultant, that's a wonderful skill to have, to be able to look at something, not really care what anyone else in the room is invested in, and say, I just need to say, the problem is this. Like, that is why consultants get paid the money they get paid. If you can't do that, then you can't play that role. So actually, I think sometimes it's understanding like the skills that we actually have. And I speak to women all the time who are like, the things that I was always trying to like deaden down in myself, or kind of suppress down when I was in a corporate job, and now the things that I need to sort of bring back up again, because they are the things that are the heart and soul of the work that I now do. And that is one of the things that I love most about being an entrepreneur. I think it's just that, that list of things that you're like, if only I wasn't like this, if only I didn't have that, suddenly it becomes like your biggest USP, which is very exciting.
And I think that when you're not when you're not honest with your client, you're doing them a disservice. If you just say what somebody wants to hear, they're not going to advance. And eventually they're going to be like, well, you're full of shit. And
Yeah. You have to be able to say those difficult things, and it is really difficult, like getting to a point where you give yourself permission to speak. Sometimes I've absolutely found that in the last 8 years. But exactly what you're saying, Iris, if you don't have the desire or the ability to do that, then you can't help someone, because they need to be told the truth.
Right. And I had every one of my clients, and I mean every one of my clients, say, I love you because you don't, you tell it like it is, whether I want to hear it or not. And I tell people right before they're going to work with me, I'll be like, I'm just going to let you know this straight out, that if something is not working, I'm going to tell you it's not working. If you're not doing something that you should be doing, I'm going to tell you that. And if there's a bad situation, I'm going to tell you that too. Because if I don't, you're not going to know. And then if you don't know, you can't fix it. It's like, if you don't know something is broken, you can't fix it. And so, to me, it is extremely important to be completely, 100% honest, 100% transparent.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that. I had people that I worked with that didn't want to hear it. This was years ago. And so I wouldn't tell them. And then finally, I'm like, how can I not tell them this? So I remember the first time I had to have that hard conversation. This was a client that I ended up not firing, but just slowly phasing out. And I was kind of, saying stuff that, they wanted to hear. And I finally, and this is my very first, but it was like 14, 15 years ago. And I finally said, you know what, this isn't working for me. There are things that are not good, and you need to hear these, and you need to know this, or we're not going to be able to fix things. And he literally was like, I didn't hire you to hear the bad stuff. I hired you to fix the bad stuff. And I said, yeah, but if you don't know what's not working, I can't fix it, because then I don't have access to these things.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't get it. His son got it. And his son was like, literally, I'm sorry, my father's being a dick. I was just like, oh my goodness. And I almost said his name and I can't. But, and I finally said, if you aren't going to be able to hear the hard stuff, then we're not going to be able to work together. Because I can't do my job for you properly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work for you improperly. And so we agreed to kind of part, which was crazy, because I was like, you would rather not hear what's wrong? So that put me on a different trajectory, that it was like, I'm laying everything out from the beginning. If I'm going to tell you something, if you don't like what I tell you, it is what it is, but I'm going to tell you regardless. And that really helped with like a lot of different things. But so when you one of the questions I ask is, do you miss corporate? But I know that answer, so I'm not gonna ask that. But as an entrepreneur, so many people, because people listening to this are people who are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, and there are also seasoned entrepreneurs listening. So a couple of questions, and one is, what advice do you have for somebody who's thinking of becoming an entrepreneur? They're in their job, they're miserable, or they've been forced, and they're, in this position where they have to figure something out. What advice do you have for them?
I think I would say just make sure that you're really connected with what this vision is for what it could be. And it's a really complicated thing, because on one hand, you want to allow it to become as big as it needs to be. So I think what we can sometimes do is be like, oh, I've got an idea. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to make it work. Oh, no, I'm really discouraged. Oh, I think I should just give up. So we want to you want to be able to sit back and be like, what is this vision? And almost that is the preparation. Like, what is this spark of an idea that I'm being given about what my place in the world might actually be? And like, for me, like I said, that's been a journey of 8 years, and I've only really allowed it to become more expansive quite recently in the big picture. And so I would say almost don't rush into doing it before you really know what you want it to be. But then the flip side to that, and I'm sorry, this is a paradox, but like, just get on and do it. Like, you know, we can spend so long kind of planning, preparing, and thinking, oh, you know, like in 5 years' time, I'll probably do this. And it's like, why not just plan to do it in 6 months? Why not just get it done? And so that's the thing, like, you don't need to have a fully formed like business plan with all the details worked out. You just need to know basically like what you're going to be offering, who is the market, what you're going to charge them, how soon will you make a profit. Those are the really important things to understand. And I think everything else, it will grow and evolve. So, you know, you get to a certain point where you can't really know what the answer is until you are out there doing it, because it's, you know, we learn by doing, don't we? So I think it's that combination of vision and action, and that balance might look different for everyone, but I think it's starting to really connect with like your inner guidance on like what this is supposed to be, and get the help that you need, I think is a really important thing as well. Because actually so many of us, like I probably could have got to where I am much sooner if I had been a lot more committed to my personal growth. When I started my business, I didn't know if I believed in mindset. So obviously that was a massive thing that held me back. But that was, you know, I started extremely far back because I had a lot of trauma in my past. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I was living this like crazy scarcity lifestyle, and a lot of that had to be unpicked, and it doesn't just happen overnight. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter how long it takes. If you're on the journey and if you're committed to it, then everything will happen at the time that it needs to. And really the main thing is that you need to be on that path. You need to be taking the next step every day, whatever that looks like.
Right. And be, you know, keep your eyes open, like keep your eyes and ears open for those opportunities, right? Because one of the things that I found, and you know, I've had my business for 8 years, and I think that this year has been the best year for growth, the best year for the right connections, the best year for the right clients. Not that my clients before weren't, right? I have some clients that I would love to be able to work with again, and I will be able to in a year and a half. You know, that's like another story, but the trajectory that I'm on now is so different than when I first started.
Yeah.
But also, I really believe it's who you surround yourself with. Right. And I always go back to our group, and it's because, you know, Megan created this amazing freaking network of women that are just so dynamic, and so supportive, and everyone's at, you know, there are some people that are on the same level, there are some people that are working up there, but everybody's, you know, somewhere, and there's always a way to fit in somewhere, and because of that, that's helped me become more confident in myself and what I'm doing. I know my shit. I mean, I've been doing it forever, so I'm not worried about that. But when you have this opportunity to glean other people's experiences and see that you're not the only one going through it, you're not the only one who's been through it, that's just made such a big difference for me. It's like, I'm not alone. Other people are, you know, going through this. Other people have had, you know, Jen Koken talks about imposter syndrome and how it's not like a real thing. But we all experience some sort of moment where it's like, whew, do I really know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
why do these people want to work with me? It's like you get those moments, and I've gotten to the point now that those are more, they're far and few and far between, where before they were happening a little bit, closer to each other. And my clients, my clients are just phenomenal, and they're growing. I was hired on as a consultant for one of my clients, and that was huge for me. That kind of put me in a wow. My knowledge and my experience and all of that is even more valuable than I thought. So that really kind of helped me kind of recover, because there's some things I can't legally talk about, but I just got out of a situation that kind of left me feeling not as confident and stuff. So, but now it's like gloves off, and I know my stuff. And when I speak with fellow marketers and fellow, whatever, it solidifies that, it clarifies that, and it's like it's just been a really great experience. So.
Yeah, and it is all forward progress as well. I think that's one of the things that I've been really amazed by in my business. It's just like the resilience that you need to develop in order to get up in the morning and just be like, let's do it again. Like sometimes, there can be so many disappointments. There can be things that don't go the way that you kind of really want them to. There can be a lot of rejection. I think, times when you're like, do you want to work with me? And someone is like, no, I really don't like you. But I think it can feel, I think I used to see it as like, sometimes life goes forward and sometimes it goes back. Whereas I actually think it's much more like we're always going forward. We can't help but go forward. It's just a matter of like, do we get back up after like something has knocked us off our feet? And actually, I do think actually looking at kind of how I have felt in my business over the last 8 years, like quite a lot of stuff can happen now. And I'm like, oh, I need 5 minutes. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm back. Let's do it.
Yes. And 100%. And mindfulness did that for me, right? For me, it's like 90 seconds. I give something 90 seconds, whether it's in business, whether it's whatever. If something like knocks me, off my balance, it's like, okay, you get 90 seconds. If it's something a little bit more, I wouldn't say traumatic, but a little bit more paramount, then it gets 10 minutes. But that's it. Because, you're right. You have to be resilient, right? You have to be able to, I was in sales for years. You talk about rejection. Oh my God. It's like when you're in sales, if you don't have a good sense of self and good self-esteem, you can hang it up. Because I remember, man, in the beginning, I would go home just feeling like a giant piece of shit, because it's like, they don't like me. They don't want to work with me. Had nothing to do with me. They didn't like the product.
Yeah, exactly. It's that tying up our self-worth with the thing that we are selling at that particular moment. I think as women, we tend to do that a whole lot more than I think that men do. And it means that we can take it very personally. And so part of it is just like learning for ourselves, isn't it? Like this is not personal, this is business. And it's very easy to say that. And like, yes, I've had a lot of discouragements over the years in my business. I've had times where I haven't been able to bounce back as easily, but I think I often had a belief, I think before, that like if I look perfect, if I do everything perfect, if I get A stars in all of my things across the board, then I will have a successful business. Whereas actually it's not really like that at all, is it? It's more a case of like, everything has to be good enough. You can be a complete like hot mess behind the scenes. You can be a hot mess in front of the camera sometimes. And actually like people love you for it even more. And so I think it's starting to separate out those things, actually, like who we are and how the business is doing. They're different things. But also, like, you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have everything worked out. You can actually make a lot of money just on the basis that you're able to help your clients with their most pressing need. that is actually the basis on which you make money, not about like, am I good enough? Am I getting like the A grade for all the things that I'm trying to do? It's really not about that. It's about the results that you can achieve for your client.
Right. And people say, you dress a certain way. I mean, I wear polo shirts and jeans. And if I'm meeting, if it's like I'm meeting with a board, I may wear like a bit more of a suit-like thing. But for me, this is it, and it's my business, and I can dress how the hell I want, and I love it, and it's who I am, and it's what makes me comfortable. And that's what it's about. It's, we have to be comfortable. In order for us to be able to serve our clients 100%, we need to be authentic with them and with ourselves. And I think that that's a really big thing. So for seasoned entrepreneurs, right, that, are kind of where we're at right now, and what are some struggles, or what's like a struggle that you had that you've come through the other side of?
I mean, I think I would probably have to say like crushing self-doubt. And like I've had a lot of dark times in my business. I've had multiple times where I've been like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I've tried to get a job, and then like I'm the kind of person, if I go for a job, I get it. But I've had like 2 or 3 occasions where I've been like, I have to do something different because this is just, it's not working. And actually I've like failed at getting a job. So it's like, oh, well, thank you for that giant sign. I just have to continue with what I'm doing. And now I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, yeah, I can see that was a good decision. Well done for not leaving. But I think at the time, like I often just felt like it was like this massive like cliff face in front of me, and I just had to climb up the entire thing completely by myself. And really, I think that's why I think the personal development work has been so important, because there is so much work that I've done processing my own trauma, and that's ongoing. That hasn't stopped. Like it's going to be something I'm working on for some time. But at the same time, it's just starting to realize that you don't have to be controlled by things that have happened to you in the past. You don't have to be controlled by the pain that you've experienced. And that isn't actually your identity. There's a whole identity there that is covered over with these things. And we are able to, piece by piece, like pick them away and make progress, So I think a really important thing for me has been that journey, and just being able to look back to when I was 31 and being like, I'm leaving my 30s a really different version of myself to who I was back then. And like, it makes me excited for the future, because it's like, ooh, what amazing things am I going to become and discover like in the next decade of my life? And I think that's a really healthy place to get to. But I think for me, aside from the whole like, it's really hard to start a business when you're a woman. I didn't have any inkling that I would be able to get like funding or financial support for my business. So I built my whole business from $300 of my own money. But, all those things in the early days that I did, like going to networking meetings where I was one of like 5 women in the room. And you might not get the sense of my stature on this screen, but I'm a petite lady. I don't look older than I am. People often like, wow, you're like 25. And so like starting to like sit in my own authority in those situations where you're talking to middle-aged men and they're just looking at you like, you just look like a child. There have been a lot of things like that to overcome on the journey. And I think, with some of those things, yes, some of that belongs to them and like their inability to see the value in someone who's different to them. But some of it also lay with me and like my inability to see my own value, because I think when we're comfortable with the fact that we're awesome at what we do, when we sit comfortably with that and we don't need other people to validate that for us, we show up with a completely different energy. So I think that like there's a whole host of like kind of diversity issues and like being taken seriously as a woman, but like I don't know if I can do it, being my miniature self, then there's hope for everyone, really.
Sorry, that just so how, well, I won't say how, and you give your secret sauce away, but how do you help women get to that 7-figure piece? Like, what do you how do you coach them? What do you put in place for them to get there? And where do they start? Do they start at 6 figures and they get to 7 figures? Do they start at like 5 figures and they get, like what is the...
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I do have services, like I have an online course, and I also have a coaching group for women who are not at 6 figures yet, because I think that is a really difficult stage to get through. And I know for me, that was a really testing time. And it took quite a long time, but it was also intensely difficult, because that's when a lot of the mindset stuff bites really hard, but you don't have the revenue and the success in your business to prove to yourself that you are actually capable. So I do give support to women who are in those very early stages, because you don't need to spend 10 years getting to 6 figures. You can do it in a month. It really can, and that's not to be like, oh, you should do it in 30 days. I'm not that kind of coach at all. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You can actually get the help that you need and have it happen quite easily. But my core audience who I love to support are women who are already in the sort of $200,000-$300,000 a year bracket, and they know that they want to get to 7 figures. And to be really simple about it, the things that we deal with are finances and feelings. So we look at the revenue coming into the business, we work out the business model, we make it something which really, really works. And quite often I say to people, right, from now on, your minimum contract size is going to be $100,000. And if you can get it to 500,000, all for the good. Because when you do that, you can make your 7-figure revenue. If your contract size is $500,000, that's 2 clients.
Yeah.
And it's all about making it much more simple.
Right.
I think we often think, oh gosh, 7 figures, it's so much, it's so big. But the thing you have to remember is that the definition of a small business is a company that has a revenue of less than 50 million. So actually 1 million in the context of 50 million, it's really small. And so it doesn't have to be this massive thing where you employ 100 people and there's loads of things going on all the time. It can actually just be you doing a big contract for 2 different clients. That's all it can be made of. It could be 4 clients who are paying $250. I try and make it bespoke for every client. There's not one single thing, but it's starting to be how do we get there by making it really, really simple.
Right.
But alongside that kind of strategic piece and getting the right business model in place, it's also about getting the mindset and the sense of your own potential. What is your calling? What is the vision that you have, that sometimes when I start working with women, they are not even able to put it into words yet, or they're not even able to admit it to themselves. And it's actually quite common that while we're working together, they suddenly go, do you know what? I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to be a thought leader. I want to get on that TV show. All these things start to kind of come out, and because it's giving them that sense of possibility, that sense of you are free to achieve as much as you want to. There doesn't need to be a lid on what you're allowed to achieve. 7 figures doesn't have to be the pinnacle. That can actually be the starting point. So it's a combination of those 2 things.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. And see, we're at an hour already. I told you.
You said it would go fast, and it has.
I told you. It's everybody who's on is what? But because we're conversational. It's not very...
Well, we said, didn't we, when we first met, we were we should have recorded this conversation because it would have made a really good podcast episode.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And you have your own podcast, right?
Yes, I do. It's called the 7-Figure Consultant Podcast. We are just about to release episode 135. So there is a wonderful archive of weekly episodes that I've been putting out for the last nearly 3 years.
That is fantastic. And I think we're at episode, 10 at this point, although...
It's so exciting, though, when it's all new and fresh and exciting.
It is. And, it's funny because I'm going to be, inviting different people on, and we can talk about this offline. But I love this format. Ooh, you disappeared. I love this format because it's very conversational. People that listen to it are it's great. I'll be in the middle of doing something and I just, listen to you guys in the background, and it's I'm listening to somebody's conversation and I'm gleaning so much information from it. And so I'm definitely going to start talking about, my expertise a little bit more, but it's important to me for the people that I have on, for their audience, so that, for your audience, that they get to hear a little bit more about your journey. And because for me, the journey is, I think, the most important thing. Like where we end up is important, but the journey the journey of what helped make us who we are, I think is fascinating. So for me, it's always, fascinating to hear that. So, okay. So because we're at a minute, or at an hour, I always ask this question at the end. And I hate to end it. And you and I are definitely going to have to talk more. So
definitely.
But what lights your fire? What is the one thing that lights you up? And it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be whatever. But what gets you all passionate and fired up?
I think I want to say a couple of things. Firstly, it's finding like that connection with my clients, because I've always been someone who's like a little bit awkward, and I'm not like a lot of people who I know. I've got this like big kind of energy, but in a very small package, and I'm often quite introverted as well. But when I meet clients, and I can often feel like when they fill out my application form, I'm like, I can feel that this person is a fit, or I can feel that this person is not a fit. That is such an exciting thing to me. I love that connection. I think like the second thing I would have to say is like music, singing, like melody, harmony. I love it.
So we're gonna have to do that. So did I tell you about the program I did that I downloaded, right? Carafun or something like that?
No, but I downloaded like a karaoke app at one point and was having a lot of fun with it.
Oh my God. So this thing it's called Carafun, and you can sponsor us if you want, but no, I'm kidding. But it's like the best thing, because it's got like, 200,000 songs. It's like ridiculous, the volume that it has, and it's helped me get back into singing again. I quit my band 4 years ago, I guess. Unfortunately, a lot of it was for political purposes, because it just was getting stupid and disrespectful. And but they were phenomenal musicians. But it was hard rock metal. So I was doing like hard rock and metal, which was like awesome. And you talk about cathartic. Oh my God, you can get up there and be like, whatever. But it was really awesome. And so I downloaded this because I was like, man, I really, really miss that. So we'll have to like do a Zoom and pull out our guitars and sing and harmonize.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah.
Like that. So, well, thank you for taking time out of your day, especially an hour. I know you're busy. So,
oh no, it's an absolute pleasure. And sorry to disappear briefly. I had a small family member try and make a cameo, but it was not allowed.
Okay. This is did you see the one with Fabienne? Theo was like all over it, and we're very, you know what? This is real. This is real. I'm not polished. I don't really care. So the kid wants to show up. Kid can show up.
He has a radar for when cameras are rolling, and he knows. He's always like, oh, I've got a question to ask. It's like, you're not coming on camera.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I'll hang on while I say goodbye to everybody, and we'll talk really quickly, and then we'll talk about getting together again after this. But
amazing.
So thank you. So, and for you all, thank you again so much. This is just so much fun, and I hear from so many people that they're getting a lot of really good information from this, and just having a lot of fun listening to the conversation. So I really want to thank you guys for hanging out for an hour, whether you're watching, whether you're listening. It really means a lot. Download this, share it, like it, comment, do all the things, because the more you do that, the longer I get to stay around and do all this stuff. So, but for now, I'm going to sign off and say thank you again. And you know what? Go out, find what lights your fire. See you guys soon. Bye.